So this is it. This is Volvo's smallest electric car and also the smallest car they sell. This is the Volvo EX30 and it's one of the most anticipated electric cars to hit Australia this year. And it's because it was promised to be really good on price, performance and packaging and its technology. So has it delivered? Well, I'll give you a hint. I think it's better than a Tesla. But what would compel me to make such an outlandish statement? Well, to be honest, I was skeptical of this car when it was announced because it seemed too good to be true. But here it is, you can buy it, people are driving them, and to be honest, it lives up to the hype. And that all starts with the price. So this thing is priced from $59,990 for the base model, rear-wheel drive with less features, but the one you're looking at here is the single most powerful production Volvo ever made. So this thing's packing a 69 kilowatt hour battery, the same as the base model, but for $71,290, you can get this twin performance ultra model, which will give you 315 kilowatts of power, which is 422 horsepower, and 543 newton meters of torque. And so that'll give you an estimated range of around 460 kilometers, but the big headline here is that this can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 3.6 seconds. So be careful which drag race you pick, because if it's with one of these, you might lose. The EX30 is cleverly packaged. It's meant to be a small little SUV, and it has things like a front trunk storage area, which isn't that big because this is a dual motor version of the car, but there's some cute diagrams of a little EX30, some clouds, and also a Swedish moose underneath this little cover here, which you can use to store your charging cable. You get really nice things like these LED lights up front, which greet you when you walk towards the car. And here's the thing, Volvo's in the middle of rolling out the keyless smartphone function for this car, but in the meantime, you're gonna be getting this as your key. It's a beautiful leather pouch that says Volvo on it, but it's a literal brick. You can't lock and unlock the car with this because this locks and unlocks with proximity, just like a Tesla. And it has 2 key cards on the inside that you're going to be able to keep in your wallet just in case your phone doesn't work for whatever reason. And I really love the look of this thing. I love the curvature here in the bonnet. It looks really interesting and it looks actually quite wide for a small little SUV. You've got some air pass-throughs here on the side, and this one's wearing these nice 20-inch aero wheels which look fantastic. And I love how they don't have Volvo logos in the middle, but instead they're just on the outside of the wheel, which looks great. Now, I'm a big fan of the color choice for this particular press car. I love this light blue, but there's a bunch of different colors you can choose from. We also have similar mirrors from a Polestar 2 because they're a frameless mirror, so you get a lot more surface area here when you're looking through them, and they're obviously contrasting along with this contrasting black roof, and you have this blacked out sills around the windows and obviously around the window trim. And then as you can see, I'm 5'11" and this thing is tiny. It's only up to here on me, and it says EX30 along the side here, and your charging port is going to be found here on the side. And so after you ask how much this thing costs, you want to know how fast this thing can charge. Well, it will take you around 30 minutes to charge this from 10 to 80% from a fast charger that can charge up to 150 kilowatts, because this can only accept a fast charge rate of up to around 158 kilowatts. So it's definitely not one of the fastest charging EVs out there, and the battery is running on a 400 volt architecture system, which is starting to get a little bit on the old side, because better EVs have a thermally managed battery, because you cannot precondition this battery on this car, which is again a bit disappointing. And also those cars with more advanced batteries will be running an 800 volt architecture system, which is simply just more efficient battery. And a side note is that there is no little light here to put your little dust covers on when you're finished charging at night, which can just be a tiny bit frustrating from an otherwise quite brilliant little SUV. But something that can be a little bit frustrating is that even though I'm in proximity with the car, it can't unlock from the passenger side. So I have to go around and now it unlocks, which is just a bit frustrating if you only want to get into the passenger side of the car and for whatever reason it's locked itself. The car obviously has very good door feel for a Swedish/European influence electric car. When I close the door, it makes a really nice sound, but that little sound you heard there is also the fact I can hide my water bottle in the door, and there's some actual cloth here in the door which stop things from rattling around, which is quite nice. And to fit a water bottle this big in the door is a major plus point. Now, this car uses a lot of recycled materials on the outside and on the inside, so you're going to see this weird textured plastic, which normally in the car industry we would criticize, but because it's got better density than cheap plastic and also has a nice texture to it, it passes off as a nice nicer material and it feels more premium than just regular injection molded hard plastic. Now you can choose a bunch of different interior colors for this car, but obviously you can color match your exterior. So this is a blue car and we've got the indigo interior, which I think looks really nice. We have these leather material seats and we also have some nice cloth on them as well, and they are really, really comfortable. And what I love is that this car brings in a lot of light. So there's not much happening here on the dashboard, even though it is quite interesting to look at. I love these translucent pieces here in the air vents, and the air vents are a work of art themselves. They look fantastic, and of course they're physical, so they're very easy to adjust, unlike some other electric cars which makes you go through the screen here. But unfortunately, pretty much every other control is through this 15-inch screen. But before I touch on this, I want to talk about some of the storage solutions here. Like we have a wireless phone charger down here and out of the way, which is very useful. And we also have some nice storage here in the center with some blue plastic. And then if you don't want this all exposed, you can simply close it up. And there's a little gap here in this shelf for your cables to reach those two USB-C ports. Now you might be wondering, where are the cup holders here? Well, you push this out and your cup holders are revealed. You don't want to use them as cup holders? Well, you can slide them out of the way and you get additional storage, which you can then push into the center here, which is very useful. So unfortunately, there's no way to access the center cubby from above. Instead, you have to reach underneath, which means also the rear passengers can access what you put in there as well, which can be useful. Now, there is no driver cluster in front of me. Everything happens in this screen, but there is a little sensor for your driver monitoring systems, which actually work very well. You have two stalks here. The left one is for your wipers and your indicators and your lights, and the right one is a column mounted shifter. We also get this Quirky type steering wheel with a nice 12 o'clock center, so even though it looks the same a little bit when it's upside down, at least you'll know which way the wheel's pointing because you'll have this little stitch here in the middle. You've also got some buttons here for your media controls and your driving controls, which means you do still have a bunch of physical controls to engage with without feeling like everything is locked through the screen, even though a lot of things are. And additionally, I have to talk about these door handles. They feel fantastic. They just look great, and all the build quality in here is just next level for a car at this price point. I mean, you'd expect it, but it's a nice reminder that Volvo isn't cheaping out here. Even moving the screen, this feels like it's directly bolted to the chassis of the car. It feels so sturdy on there. Additionally, I love the sound bar that runs across the top because in order to save production costs for left-hand, right-hand drive markets, Volvo has put everything into the center of this car. So your window switches here in the center, and you have to press rear to be able to put the rear ones down, a bit like a modern day Volkswagen, but there's a good reason for it because they put it here in the center rather than keeping it on the armrest. And there's no speakers in the front doors either. Instead, this whole sound bar is generating all the sound for the front passengers, but there are two speakers in the rear doors to sort of fill out that surround sound. Additionally, you have your hazard lights up here as well if you want to access them, and you do have Volvo's connected services like an SOS button and a roadside assistance button as well. And finally, your passenger doesn't have a glove box. Instead, they get more feet room, but then the little glove box is found right here in the middle, and you're going to be able to keep a few things in there like those Volvo key cards I was telling you about. But I really have to show you what's going on in this screen. So really what you have here across the top is your car information, what gear you're in, and if you want more information, you can press a button and it will show you your car here, and when you're driving, it will also show you the lanes and other vehicles around you, a bit like a Tesla. Now here's your Google Maps, which works really well, and also when you plan a route through here, it will send you through nearby charging stations and tell you how much charge you'll have left. So this is a Google Automotive operating system, which works really well. And then down here, we have Spotify connected, which is really quite cool because this car has its own connectivity. Now you might be wondering, where is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto? That is coming in a later update, and it will be wireless, which is a good thing. But for now, you can just use the native operating system just like this. And you can use things like YouTube, so we can go in there and it should connect up pretty easily. There we go. So they basically want you to log in, and then we have a phone connectivity, we have radio, we have a camera system here. As the boot is open, the car will animate the car with the boot open, and here you are. You have pretty clear cameras, which I think are very good. But the main thing in here is the Google Assistant. So if I go, hey Google, turn on the heated seats.
Got it. Turning on the seat heater for the driver.
It's so quick to respond that it basically doesn't need you to interact with the screen if you need to put things in like a navigation or do any crucial car controls, which I think is very impressive. We obviously have quick controls for defrosters in our glove box and our boot. And then if we go back to the home menu here, we're able to go through and and activate quick controls for the car itself, so we can activate wipers and all that sort of stuff. But the annoying thing is that if you want to adjust your mirrors, you have to do it through this screen, which is slightly annoying considering we have quick controls for everything else. It's just a bit annoying that our mirrors are hidden, especially if you don't want to mark up those nice 20-inch wheels. And then we have controls for lane keeping assist, one pedal drive, and driver alerts, which is very useful. You have car status information, you have things like tire pressure monitoring and software updates, which all happen over the air, and we have some settings here. But something I really like are these moods that you have. It's called ambience, and you can go through here and go into forest bath, archipelago, and you've also got midsummer, Nordic twilight, and northern lights. So obviously very Swedish themed. And the thing is, they have their own accompanying sound. So if I go and unmute it, you can relax. And if you're stressed out about driving, you can do this while you're driving, or you can simply do it while you're parked and charging, which I think is really cool. And even the Nordic Twilight one will remind you that you're not in Europe for summer. Instead, you can just pretend you're there by hearing the ambience of a European summer, which is so cool. I thought it was tacky, but to be honest, I'm a convert. And then you have basic controls down here, like your apps. You've also got your hazards here, which are also located as a physical button above you. Annoyingly, your volume controls are locked through the screen. I would have loved to have seen a tiny volume knob somewhere, because I love that about old Volvos that have the big volume slider, because that's quite useful, but now it's all on the screen, all through the steering wheel. And then we have our climate controls here, and we've also got manual controls or automatic controls. And you've also got an air quality sensor here too, which is quite good. Now, annoyingly, your charging settings are actually really limited here. So all you can do is limit your charging and just tells you how much charge you have left. It's annoying that you can't precondition this battery and there's no vehicle to load functionality. So if you are looking for those features, they're not here on the EX30. Now, there is a price to pay in the EX30, and it's in the rear seat room. Look, these front seats are taking up most of the space in front, and they can be pushed forward a tiny bit more, but there's no getting around it that there is no feet room underneath the seat, and I'm gonna be a bit jammed if the front passengers want to be comfortable. But what can I say about the back seats? Well, they're pretty spongy, they're quite nice to sit on. There aren't too many amenities here in the back apart from 2 USB-C ports and your window controls, which are found in the center, not on your armrest. But we still get nice materials here. We have a reading light, plenty of light from this big glass roof, but there's no armrest that we can use here to make the most of the seat in the back. But we do have a little storage tray which has some pictures of a moose and some trees on it, which is very cute, and that allows you to use that as a storage tray which you can remove. So for kids, it's okay because there's ISOFIX points in the back, but if I was an adult sitting here in the rear, unfortunately the floor just feels a little bit high up, which is a common complaint that I have with a lot of electric vehicles, meaning that my knees feel like they're further away from the seats and feels like I'm sort of crouching here a tiny bit. But if you need to carry people in the back, it's still very practical. It's just that it's not the most spacious back seat you can get here in this segment. But I do like things how like the rear windows go down all the way, and the fact there's a little tray here for your smartphone for when you're charging it, which again, it's a very clever and well thought out car, even into the back seats. You need to understand that this is the smallest electric car that Volvo offers, meaning that the amount of space back here is just over 300 liters, which is good for about 2 small suitcases. And there's some tiny storage underneath the boot floor for things like your charging cables, but it's not a huge amount of space, but it's definitely plenty for people who are taking a small family away, or if it's just 2 people going away on a longer road trip, it should be just fine. And for day-to-day use, it is very practical, especially with these small little cutouts here on the side of the boot that allows you to put things like water bottles or smaller items in the back without having them roll around. You have some tie-down points for a cargo net, and you do have a 12-volt socket here in the rear if you need to supply power to anything here in the back. And what I like is that Volvo have included a little diagram here to tell you what can and might fit in the back of your Volvo EX30. And of course, this has a power tailgate because it's the most expensive EX30. Now, this is the fastest production Volvo ever produced. So that means you can accelerate to 100 kilometers an hour just like this. It's slow to start off, but oh my gosh, it starts to build a lot. That's 422 horsepower at your disposal, and that is a lot of power for a little SUV like this. And the mid-range acceleration is impressive. The thing I love about this little SUV is that it doesn't throw all its power down and doesn't make you feel ill. It really rolls the power on, which is a common complaint for a lot of owners. They actually don't like how it does that. But to be honest, after living with this thing, knowing that I have that power at my disposal, I feel like it's easy to access with a squeeze of the throttle. Unless you want to set drag times, you're not really going to want that immediate punch every time you just dip into the pedal. Now, the most impressive thing with this machine is its handling. It is so impressive. This is riding on larger 20-inch wheels because it's the top of the range EX30. And I thought that the ride would be compromised because of these bigger wheels and the fact it's a big, heavy electric car. There's a lot of dense weight low down near the wheels in your suspension, which means it can sometimes create a bit of a wobbly ride. It can feel like it's crashing over some bumps. But here, Volvo's done some wizardry here to make this thing not just handle incredibly smoothly, like this is just doing such an amazing job of gripping to the road, giving you progressive feel, and even though the steering wheel is a weird shape, I feel like I've got complete control and feel of this little SUV going through corners. It's a bit of a dead steering feel, but you're not looking for the most lively steering in a family SUV. This thing just coasts over bumps. It's just floating over them right now, which is really impressive. And then when I hit some harsher bumps in the road, it doesn't get too upset. It just sort of, you know, just sort of sorts itself out and it doesn't make the ride completely ruined. Now, in terms of braking, we have one pedal driving as this thing will sort of pull back off the accelerator and then you can dip down to that rich torque, which is all available at 0 RPM and just get sailing off again. The noise isolation here is incredible. This is really, truly impressive. I'm not getting a lot of road noise, and because this thing is so aerodynamic, not getting a lot of wind noise either. Listen to this. It's beautifully quiet, which does mean that you can make the most of the speaker system in here, which can sound a little weird because the soundbar is way up front. So once you know that that's a big soundbar and you don't have speakers down to your doors, it will feel a little bit like the sound is just being thrown from you from up front. But to be honest, it's been a really good listening experience for most of the time. The driver aids in here are actually really useful too. They're not annoying. There's a driver monitoring system, which normally makes my heart skip a beat because I know it means that it's going to be intrusive. And to be honest, it's really forgiving. Unless I'm really distracted with what's going on the screen, the car won't tell me to look at the road every 5 minutes. Additionally, I yawned. I literally just yawned and the car said, hey, it looks like you're tired. You should probably take a break, which was a really clever integration of the driver monitoring system. So that is deeply impressive and it's done really well inside the EX30. And the ergonomics of the driving position here is really quite good. I have plenty of visibility in here because of that sloping bonnet down there. I have decent sized mirrors, which have very good blind spot monitoring. We have front and rear autonomous emergency braking, which is very good. So if you're pulling out into a junction, it will warn you before you pull out in case you're looking the wrong way that there is a car in front of you. The 360-degree parking camera system is perfect for parking, but the only annoying thing in this when I'm driving it is the lack of quick adjustments for the mirrors, which is something that I found very annoying when trying to park. So I sort of had to prop myself up in my seat when I'm parking to avoid scraping those beautiful 20-inch wheels. As for the range, I've been, pleasantly surprised by it. It works really well in the city, which is where I'd recommend driving this thing most of the time, in terms of just being able to make the most of its range. Out on the highway, I did notice that this thing started to sort of chew through its range a little bit quicker than I would like, but to be honest, it's actually very livable, this range. It's a really good EV for that reason. It has efficient motors, it has a big enough battery that you can go on road trips, but really the secret sauce to this car is its handling. If it had terrible handling, you wouldn't want to spend more time in this. And there's no unpleasant surprises in the driving experience here. And I really like the column-mounted shifter, a bit like the old Tesla Model 3, which then you can just pull down once on and activate cruise control. And the turning circle is really impressive too, because this is a ground-up electric car. So Volvo have been able to just make this thing work as intended. It doesn't have to compromise for any sort of petrol powertrains or anything else. So you can have a good turning circle, really nice ride and handling. This is just one of the best electric cars I've driven under $100,000. So as a total package, the EX30 gets my endorsement as one of the best small electric cars you can buy under $100,000. I definitely would pick it over things like the Kona EV or the Kia Niro EV, and it would go neck and neck with something like the Tesla Model Y. Now the Tesla Model Y gets better interior storage and faster charging times, but if you don't care about that and you want something with a smaller footprint and something that drives a bit better than a Tesla Model Y, well, here is your answer. But if it was my own money, I would buy a Volvo EX30. I love how this thing drives, I love the interior space, I also love how it packages all this really clever technology without making it feel like it's really tacky, unlike some other brands like BYD or Tesla. I feel like it's the thinking man's electric car. If you enjoyed something like a BMW i3 but thought it was too outlandish, and you don't want to buy something like a BYD or a Tesla which is trying to explore the very cutting edge of car technology, well, this is the perfect middle ground which sort of brings in some quirkiness and some clever packaging without having to sacrifice usability and functionality.